All right, I know there's a bunch of old people that watch this show too, so just so y'all get the reference. A Zerg rush is a reference from an old video game. And that's an important piece of context for this morning's show. So let's let's talk about Riley Gaines and the Zerg Rush trans. Good morning. Sergeant Major opens up strong with old is a great success story, and video games were never my shtick. And that's, so StarCraft 2 was one of my favorite video games. It's been a hot minute since I played it. And we're going to talk about the kidnapping of Riley Gaines this morning. And, guys, I know there was another mass shooting yesterday. Mass shooting is kind of, we're going to talk about that more at the end of the week. We're going to give that a couple of days to simmer. And on Friday, we'll talk a little bit about the psychotic left-wing reaction and why everyone should be armed. You know, the bank thing, oh yeah, the police had a great response time. Yes, they did. They had a great response time for cops, but the response time of an armed citizen is now. And that is probably the most important thing to remember when you're talking about the decision of whether or not to gird thyself against the ravages of the enemy. Interestingly, the Riley Gaines story is another one where being a lawfully armed citizen or being in the company of lawfully armed citizens would have been a boon for this young lady. Because the fact of the matter in this case, the police were there. They interceded on her behalf. And in order to intercede on her behalf, they helped her to be barricaded into a room for her safety. Rather than arrest the criminals, they arrested the victim. So let's take a look at the story. I'm going to use this version of the story. It's a popular story. There's many versions out there right now. Everybody's reporting on it. I'm going to use this version from Not the Bee. Guys, I love Not the Bee. Okay? I'm a big fan of the Bee. Right? The Babylon Bee. Remember when Babylon Bee was satire? Barely. But Not the Bee, for those of you who don't know, is a site that reports stories which are not satire. Not the Bee reports legitimate news stories about things that actually happened. Whereas the Babylon Bee tends to report stories that seem absurd, and then a couple of days later, they turn out to just be predictions. psychosis from the left. Whereas the B says, oh, no, this is like starting a story with no shit, there I was, right? The B reports stories that seem like not the B reports stories that seem like they should have been in the B, but they're not. So man wearing a dress hits Riley Gaines during speech at San Francisco State. Mob forces police to barricade her in room for safety. And one of the biggest things that I'm going to cover in just a minute here is the college's response to this. It's insane, right? So the story goes, college swimmer Riley Gaines, a vocal national voice for protecting women's sports and spaces for male athletes who live as women, was ambushed and physically hit by a crowd of trans activists who attacked and screamed at her, forcing police to barricade her in a room for 3 hours for her own safety. For 3 hours. For 3 hours. Right? This story, I've seen this video way more times than I would like to admit, because I've watched a couple of different commentators talk about this. I want you to listen for just a second. And I'm going to pull that audio down and bring it to this next clip. And you can see the police are just kind of ushering her through. But they're not taking any action.
I'm good.
The police never took any action to dissuade a violent crowd from gathering. And Sergeant Major, bring that back up on Friday when we're talking about the mass shooting itself, Dad, and we'll have a discussion about that. I don't disagree entirely, but I want to get to this, so I'm going to turn the audio back up a bit here.
Make her lose her flight.
So this is after she's been barricaded in the room, and these psychopaths, these sociopaths, are standing outside, forcing her to stay in this room.
Make her lose her flight.
Right here, you see this? There are
Tell her
police
to pay us.
officers right
Tell her
here.
to pay us, and then she could go. $10 each.
Right there. Tell her to pay us, and then we'll let her go. You have police officers. I can see at least 3 or 4 police officers standing right there, and you have somebody out here actually demanding a ransom for the release of this young lady. Now, I need to shrink that. They're actually demanding a ransom. Make her pay us $10 each, right? Sure. I'm sure, certainly that's just a joke, right? But let me clear something up for you. I've got this from Cornell Law School. What the definition of kidnapping, 18 U.S. Code 1201. We've talked about this before. Murder does not rise to the same level, right? Murders are tried in the jurisdiction where the murder occurred. Kidnapping and arson, those are the two that are guaranteed, always guaranteed, you have federal entanglement. It is a federal crime. And there's a reason for that, largely because it crosses jurisdiction, right? Because a kidnapping tends to result in the victim being taken out of the jurisdiction where the crime was committed, right? And that's one of the principal reasons that that kidnapping goes that way. See, Dad's asking, so why don't they arrest the kidnappers? They don't arrest the kidnappers because the police are complicit, right? This event happened at San Francisco State University? Yeah, at SFSU, San Francisco State University. So the local authorities are complicit. They are effectively in league, politically and ideologically aligned with the kidnappers. Just like we saw in the story we covered yesterday, where a man who was obviously having his life threatened and no other outcome could have proceeded from the events unfolding that did not include either his death or the death of the man who was attacking him with an AK-47. And because the AK-47 wielding terrorist is flying the banner of a left-wing aligned terror group, for that reason and that reason only, the man who defended himself against the ravening mob pointing a weapon at him is the one that's being charged with murder. You are not allowed to survive the ravages of the left in America today. That's not an option. They will defend to your death the theory that they have a right to commit crimes, not even necessarily in support of their ideological position, just generally. The decriminalization of drugs is another piece of this, and that's a whole complex issue, because I'm actually all for the abolition of all drug laws, but the political substrates of that particular argument have much more to do with the criminalization of whiteness than they do have with the deregulation of liberty. So whoever here's the definition, right? This is from 18 U.S. Code 1201, according to Cornell Law School. Whoever unlawfully seizes, confines, inveigles, decoys, kidnaps, abducts, or carries away and holds for ransom or reward, or otherwise any person, except in the case of a minor by a parent thereof, and even in that case, there are some exceptions. Lothhack Saw, you got to go. The person is willfully transported in interstate or foreign commerce, regardless of whether the person was alive when transported across the state boundary, or the offender travels in interstate or foreign commerce, or uses the mail or any means, facility, or instrumentality of interstate or foreign commerce. Any such act against the person is done within the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Any such act against the person is done within the special aircraft jurisdiction. The person is a foreign official. The person is among those officers, etc., shall be punished by imprisonment for any term of years or for life, and if the death of any person results, shall be punished by death or life imprisonment. Right there. Whoever unlawfully seizes, confines, that's enough right there. Whoever unlawfully confines any person. And then you add to it the exacerbating factor of for ransom or reward. But note, it says here, or otherwise. So even if you don't make demands, if you have unlawfully confined or seized a person, you have kidnapped them. We had a case recently of a false arrest committed by several police officers that we discussed on the show. And those officers, they unlawfully arrested a citizen who had committed no crime. They are being charged with kidnapping. Because the law is you cannot seize or confine a person generally. Outside, like it says here, except in the case of a minor by the parent thereof. That's like, okay, so no 15-year-old, you don't get to go with your 23-year-old boyfriend who's a known drug dealer to the rock and roll concert this weekend, and I'm telling you as your father that you're going to stay in your room. Okay, without the except in the case of minor by parent thereof, the rest of this reads like what I just described: a father taking care of his daughter, making sure that she's not out running around doing crazy stuff would constitute kidnapping. But of course it says except in the case of a minor by a parent thereof. even that has limitations, and there have been parents successfully tried on grounds of kidnapping. Usually that's in the case of estranged parents where one has legal custody. But that's kind of a far stretch from this conversation. And now what I want to kind of wrap up with is I want to come over here and talk about this. The San Francisco State University issued a statement following these events. And this is important because I want you to understand who the real victims are here, right? Dear San Francisco community, today, San Francisco State finds itself again at the center of a national discussion regarding freedom of speech and expression. Let me begin by saying clearly, okay, let me stop you right there, Aspergers. The question here of the freedom of speech and expression also entails that Riley Gaines was there on invitation to give a speech, to express her free speech. The mob, the Zerg rush of violent sociopathic activists, terrorists, and kidnappers that confined her unlawfully and without her consent and against her will into a single space for a period of no less than 3 hours, they are not conducting speech. They are committing crime. They're committing violent crime. But San Francisco State University is going to go on to defend their free speech. What about the free speech of the actual victim here? Okay, just in case, I'm pretty sure most of you guys are tracking on it. Riley Gaines is a swimmer. I'm sorry, I should have hit this first and foremost. Riley Gaines is a swimmer, but she's not just a swimmer. She's the swimmer that swam against Leah Thomas, the man who swam in the women's event and just broke all the women's records. Now, he was previously swimming on the men's team at the same college and was ranked 427th or something like that. He was a poor competitor. He's not a good swimmer. As far as the men's standard is concerned. But then he switched over and started wearing a bikini to compete in, and suddenly he's blowing away all the records by untenable degrees. And even though, as a subpar male swimmer, he was able to transition over to being listed and treated like a female swimmer and breaking all their records, despite his phenotypal and genetic advantages in competitive sports, Riley Gaines tied him dead even to the millisecond in their race. So they had a dead heat even tie for first. A man and a woman. So she's a pretty incredible athlete because she swam dead even with a man who, while not competitive as a man, still has the athletic experience of competing as a man and the inherent biological advantages of fast twitch muscles, significant strength advantage, and being 6'4". Right? When people tell you Leah Thomas is a chick, I want you to remember that's a huge bitch. She's almost as big as I am. But that's who we're talking about here. And when they tied, they gave the trophy to the man because of the photo op. They made this competitive, very successful female competitor a footnote to the headline, "Dude beats up girls at swim meet." So, San Francisco State University, Ma asks, what's his wingspan? Well, he's 6'4", so it's probably about 6'4", Mom. It's this. This is a wide ass angle lens, and his wingspan is within a couple inches of mine, so it's more than the 10 millimeter lens can handle, and I can fit your house in my 10 millimeter lens. So so let me begin by saying clearly, the trans community is welcome and belongs at San Francisco State University, but not the competitive swimmer, not the female athlete. No. Further, our community fiercely believes in unity, connection, care, and compassion, and we value different ideas even when they are not our own. Your behavior absolutely vitiates that statement. You do not value different ideas. You're censorious monsters. San Francisco State is regularly noted as one of the most diverse campuses in the United States. Okay. That word diverse. I am sick to my teeth of hearing people use the word diverse like it's an automatic positive. It's not. It is not. Right? Do you want a diverse collection of eggs? When you're loading your rifle, do you want a diverse assortment of ammunition? No, you want what is correct for the situation. You want the right tool for the right job. So the problem with this whole concept of diversity is the problem with every mechanism of quota implementation. You start pushing away qualified candidates in favor of immutable characteristics. You start saying, oh, well, this black guy's got a great academic history and a BA, but we don't have enough black women, so we need to hire one of those instead, right? The diversity thing, the quota thing, it doesn't just hurt white men, right? Affirmative action doesn't just hurt white men. It screws up everything because you're no longer competing on merit, which means you're no longer hiring on competency. It's that simple. Every time I hear somebody use the word diverse, like that word by itself makes a thing morally positive or effectively positive, I just want to slap somebody because you're being lied to. Oh, SF State, this is what makes us Gators, and this is what makes us great. Yeah, no. Diversity promotes critical discussions. No, it doesn't. New understandings and enriches the academic experience. It doesn't. It doesn't. It can. But your statement here is that it necessarily does, and that's clearly false. But we may also find ourselves exposed to divergent views. See, now it's divergent views and even views we find personally abhorrent. Okay, here's a newsflash for you, San Francisco State University. Your views are divergent from the vast majority of people on planet Earth, not just Americans, but the globe. And personally, I find them abhorrent. Here's what I find especially abhorrent. As this letter goes on, these encounters have sometimes led to discord, anger, confrontation, and fear. Now, the legal arguments for the First Amendment are that speech which needs to be protected is precisely that speech which leads to discord, anger, confrontation, and fear. That our speech is most important when it causes discomfort. It is most important when it is the sort of speech that one might not want to hear. It is most important when it is controversial. Now, that I actually find some humor in that now, because what Riley Gaines is saying is that we are a sexually dimorphic species consisting of two distinct sexes, which are physically and biologically necessary for the propagation of the species, and that those two distinctly dimorphic sexes are necessarily not identical with one another. I can hardly think of a less controversial statement. It's very difficult to imagine that the statement, boys have a penis and girls have a vagina, should be controversial in any context other than it being explained to kindergartners. And even then, you're talking about basic biology. But the letter goes on. It doesn't go on much longer. It's not a long letter. It said, we must meet at this moment and unite with a shared value of learning. No, you're not interested in learning. You're interested in making statements. And this is the one that I want, this is where it really gets funny. Thank you to our students who participated peacefully in Thursday evening's event. I'm sorry. What was that?
I'm coming. I'm good. Trust me, I'm
Did you
good.
just say mostly peaceful? Participating peacefully? Take her money, make her lose her life. Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's.
And what we're hoping to do is to keep things peaceful. And
Make her lose her flight.
Oh, make her lose her pride or something. Make her lose her something. Take something from her. Right? It took tremendous bravery to stand in a challenging space. I am proud of the moments where we listened and asked insightful questions. When were those? I haven't seen any video of that. I'm also proud of the moments when our students demonstrated the value of free speech and the right to protest peacefully. You have the right to free speech, and you have the right to peacefully assemble. You have the right to redress your government for grievances, or to petition your government for redress of grievances. Yes. You have the right to raise arms. But there is a time and a place. You do not have the right to kidnap and demand ransom. This is a significant and substantial miscarriage of justice. These people committed a serious federal crime in full view of sworn officers of the law and have suffered no consequences therewith. Now, Riley Gaines is pursuing legal action. She is apparently going to sue the college. There were administrators, there were teachers, there were faculty, staff in that hallway with these students who, if not in participation, at the very least, did not intercede. And part of what's being called for is that those faculty and staff, along with every police officer there, and I absolutely am on board for this, should be fired. At a bare minimum, those people should all be fired. Now, honestly, if you're a police officer and you watch a kidnapping and don't intercede, you're aiding and abetting. As far as I'm concerned, you are actively engaged in the activity. A cop who watches somebody being kidnapped and illegally confined like this should be treated as the lookout. They were running surveillance and security for the criminals. And that's how they should be treated by the law. I think that's where I'm going to have to go ahead and put a pin in it, because if I go any further, I'm just going to start getting aggravated and ranting on this subject. So y'all be safe out there. Thanks for watching today. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.